3, verse 14, Paul says, "Let our people also learn to maintain good works, to meet urgent needs, that they may not be unfruitful," or another version, unproductive. So this is his definition, and I recommend that to you. I believe it's a commendable one. In practical terms, he says, fruit represents good works, a thought, an attitude, or action of ours that God values because it glorifies him, or that we do it with the motive to glorify him. Now, experience bears out that many of us can do a lot of good works, but not necessarily from a place of a good heart, not necessarily motivated by love, not necessarily motivated to glorify him. So it looks good on the outside, but that good work is no longer a good work because it does not come from a motive of glorifying him, but rather from a motive of glorifying ourselves. And so in Wilkinson's definition, it's not just the good work, but it has to be motivated from a good heart. A heart in this context of wanting to see Jesus glorified. It is about magnifying him. It is about lifting him up. And this certainly includes Christ-like character qualities and the sharing of our faith through words and deeds. However, a biblical view is to see that in every area of life is an opportunity for us to bear fruit because of our desire to glorify him. John Calvin taught that our work is our worship. See, we tend to believe today that work is what we do from Monday to Saturday until Sunday when we go and worship. But Calvin taught that every believer has a holy vocation, not just full-time ministers. You approach your work as unto the Lord, since you are presenting that work as worship. If your work is your worship, then it has to be done with the utmost integrity and excellence. You see that the understanding of fruitfulness, we tend to think that we have a narrow interpretation of what fruitfulness is or what glorifies God. And often we think that only when we do something for the church, only when we do something in church on Sunday, that it counts as fruitful. And Calvin is trying to teach us, show us, or Jesus is trying to teach us and show us, no, fruitfulness can come in every area of our lives, so long as the desire is one where we seek to glorify him. So our work is so much more about making ends meet, but an act of worship to God and a service to mankind. That's what fruitfulness means. What are the keys to fruitfulness? I just want to point out 3 things and we will close. What are the keys to fruitfulness that Jesus teaches in this passage of scriptures? Number 1, remain in me. He stresses that very clearly. Remain in me. Apart from me, you can do nothing that glorifies God, that God considers of value. But by remaining in me, you will bear much fruits, the kind of fruits that God takes delight in. In other words, let's keep our relationship with Jesus up to date. Let's keep our relationship with Jesus current. Our spiritual health works very much the same way like our physical health or even our computer health. For instance, our antivirus software program. If you're an Apple user, you don't need that. But if you're a PC user, you need antivirus software. Now, what does that software do? What does that antivirus software do? It doesn't stop people from creating bugs. It doesn't even stop bugs from attacking your computer. But what that antivirus software does is keep your computer as safe as possible. When we don't keep our relationship up to date, we then become vulnerable to attacks. We become vulnerable to lies in our thoughts and in our hearts. See? Jesus never promised that we would be protected from temptation. Temptation will happen to any one of us. But when we keep our relationship up to date, we're in a stronger position to recognize a temptation and to resist it accordingly. Does that make sense? Keep our relationship up to date, just like we keep our antivirus program up to date. We're more up to date with maintaining our computer's health than we are with our spiritual health, and that's unfortunate. We're so diligent. You want to keep the thing updated? Yes, update, update, update. But we need to do the same with our walk with the Lord. Keep it updated. Keep it up to date with the Lord. Keep our relationship fresh with Him, as we do with relationships that are significant and important to us. Secondly, remain in my love. Jesus does not stop at remaining in me, but He says, remain in my love. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I've obeyed my Father's commands and remain in His love. Verse 9 and verse 10. Here we see that obedience and love are inseparably linked and are mutually dependent upon each other. I want to read to you Benner's insight about God's love. I wish I could paraphrase it, but he's written it so wonderfully, so beautifully, that I thought it'd be better if I just read it. So we capture something of God's love. Let me read. The question is, how does God feel about you? What is God's knowing of you? One young woman told me she feels afraid because she's sure God is mad at her. She thinks God is preoccupied with her sins and shortcomings and views her with anger and reproach. Is she right? I also think of a friend who can no longer believe that God takes a personal interest in humans. As one among billions of people on the face of the earth, he suspects that he and the rest of us fail to register as individuals on God's consciousness. He tells me that he wishes he could believe God loves him, but he cannot be persuaded that it is possible. Is he right? Can we put that slide up? I am convinced that God loves each and every one of us with depth, persistence, and intensity beyond imagination. These are very choice, wonderful words. Let me read it again. I'm convinced that God loves each and every one of us with depth, persistence, and intensity beyond imagination. God doesn't simply like you, nor does God simply have warm, sentimental feelings towards you just because you were created in the divine image. The truth is that God loves you with what Hannah Hurnard calls a passionate, absorbed interest. God cannot help seeing you through eyes of love. Even more remarkable, God's love for you has nothing to do with your behavior. Neither your faithlessness nor your unfaithfulness alters divine love in the slightest degree. Like the Father's love in the parable of the prodigal son, divine love is absolutely unconditional, unlimited, and unimaginably extravagant. Christians affirm a foundation of identity that is absolutely unique in the marketplace of spiritualities. Whether we realize it or not, our being is grounded in God's love. The generative love of God was our origin. The embracing love of God sustains our existence. The inextinguishable love of God is the only hope for our fulfillment. Love is our identity and our calling, for we are children of love. Created from love, of love, and for love, our existence makes no sense apart from divine love. Neither knowing God nor knowing self can progress very far unless it begins with the knowledge of how deeply we're loved by God. Until we dare to believe that nothing can separate us from God's love, nothing we could do or fail to do, nor anything could be done by anyone else to us, we remain in the elementary grades of the School of Christian Spiritual Transformation. I know it's a lot of words, but I hope some of that